For those of you excited for the X-Men to enter the MCU, be a little bit more discerning. SJW MCU was ushered in by Captain Marvel and activist extraordinaire Brie Larson. The final X-Men film of the Fox era had little buzz going into opening weekend, but nobody could have prepared for this. Dark Phoenix brought in the lowest opening weekend haul in franchise history. Audiences and critics agree it's one of the worst entries into the long-running cinema juggernaut. Today, I'm going to cover the opening weekend box office and what it means moving forward, the reaction from audiences and critics, as well as how the film deviates from the source material. Finally, I'll check in on a Marvel Studios exec who has some interesting things to say about the X-Men name. First, I would like to thank the newest subscribers to Thinking Critical YouTube. Thank you very much to Richard Adams, David Enrique, David Tukas, Tarkus, and Silver JRBR. All the success and momentum we're currently experiencing at Thinking Critical YouTube is only made possible by the support of all the wonderful viewers and channel subscribers. Now, let's do this! Box office expectations for the final X-Men film before the Disney reboot were just $50 million, extremely low by today's standards. Dark Phoenix subverted expectations, pulling in a paltry $33 million opening weekend. The only real competition came from the animated family film The Secret Life of Pets 2, which blew Dark Phoenix away. This is by far the lowest opening for any X-Men film in its 19-year history. Longtime X-Men writer and producer Simon Kinberg makes his directorial debut for the franchise in Dark Phoenix. The film sees charisma vacuum Sophie Turner's Jean Grey turn into the godlike Phoenix. The storyline was previously covered in the worst X-Men film of all times, X3 The Last Stand. The film opened in all international markets except 2, Japan and Indonesia, with an overseas total of $107 million. China led the way with $45 million. China takes a larger percentage of box office revenues from Western films than any other country. Reception from audiences and critics is not kind to Dark Phoenix. It received a B- cinema score from opening weekend audiences, an extremely low mark from that metric. Rotten Tomatoes critic aggregate score is an equally abysmal 23%, while the Rotten Tomatoes audience score sits at 64%. The general consensus among critics and fans alike is Dark Phoenix is a very disappointing film. Not the best way to end the venerated franchise that ushered in the comic movie craze all the way back in 2000. The $33 million opening is the lowest in the 19-year franchise history without adjusting for inflation. The previous franchise low was 2013's The Wolverine at $53 million. Dark Phoenix's opening dropped 51% from the most recent film. 2016's X-Men Apocalypse opened to $65 million. Deadline reports the film's budget, including production costs, reshoots, and global marketing, is $350 million. The report also estimates Dark Phoenix to lose between $100 to $120 million after its final box office tally. Early estimates of the final worldwide take are between $300 and $325 million. One thing to keep in mind is studios split box office revenues with the theaters, and China takes a much larger percentage out of American movie grosses than other countries do. Adapting the Dark Phoenix saga into one 2-hour film was a huge undertaking. It's nearly impossible to capture the rise and fall of Jean Grey in 2 hours without sacrificing a ton of story. Simon Kinberg has written or produced every X-Men film since the terrible X3 The Last Stand. The first-time director's inexperience shines in Dark Phoenix. It features boring performances, uneven tones, and poor pacing. Surprisingly, the final product's biggest issues lie in Kinberg's uninspiring script. He was given the opportunity to fix the mistakes of X3, but falls far short. It's closer to the source material than the first attempt, but it's still a bastardized version of the story. The film had a troubled production that resulted in dropping X-Men from the title and delaying the release twice due to reshoots. I'm going to go into some details of the plot now, and there are spoilers ahead. You have been warned. The source material for the film, X-Men Comics The Dark Phoenix Saga, was altered drastically. Chris Claremont's classic story sees original X-Men team member Jean Grey overtaken by godlike alien symbiote Phoenix. The Phoenix blows up a planet and Jean is put on trial by the Shi'ar, who argue killing the Phoenix is the only way to prevent a future event. After Jean's death, X-Men leader Cyclops realizes he needs to stop wandering aimlessly from fight to fight. Claremont didn't originally intend to kill off the Jean Grey character. He acquiesced when EIC Jim Shooter insisted the character couldn't be let off the hook after killing an entire planet. The film is much less focused than Claremont's story. Kinberg also blows up the tiny bit of resentment Scott Summers feels towards Professor X into a major plot line. He portrays Charles Xavier as an absent-minded father figure. Even worse, Kinberg's Xavier erased Jean's memory of killing her mother as a child, setting off a chain of events that leads to Jean impaling and killing a teammate. Xavier's betrayal, which isn't in the source material, leads the team to blame him for the death instead of Jean, leading to a story about daddy issues and even efforts to rename the school. The original story is about accepting Jean as capable of both horrific and heroic acts. Eventually, the Debarians, led by Vuk, played by Jessica Chastain, who survived Phoenix destroying their planet, arrive on Earth to convince Jean to terraform it for them. They kill Jean's father and start tearing through Earth until the X-Men intervene. Despite its PG-13 rating, the film portrays a handful of extremely violent deaths. Nightcrawler drops one Debari in front of a speeding train. 3 or 4 are torn to pieces in slow motion. PG-13, so no blood, of course. So, if you retaliate after your planet gets destroyed, you get eviscerated. Kill a teammate in a fit of rage, and it's no biggie in this film. It was Professor X's fault anyway. Some people are excited for X-Men to arrive in the MCU in the near future. Not so fast. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige already suggested the X-Men won't appear in the MCU for a very long time. Probably for the best after hearing the recent quote from Marvel Studios Vice President of Production Victoria Alonso. Alonso has helped produce every film for Marvel Studios, but apparently doesn't know much about the X-Men. During an interview about Captain Marvel's home video release, Alonso is asked about the future of the X-Men at Disney and makes a complete ass of herself. "I don't know where the future is going," Alonso told Nuke the Fridge. "It's funny that people call it the X-Men. There's a lot of female superheroes in that X-Men group. I think it's outdated." What a genius! There were 2 female members of the original X-Men team. I can't think of a single iteration that doesn't include female members. The men in X-Men isn't a gendered term, dumbass. Men is the plural of the word man, which means a member of the species Homo sapiens or all the members of the species collectively without regard to sex. It can also mean the human individual as representing the species without reference to sex. The human race, humankind. Where did Marvel Studios dig up this moron who doesn't understand basic English? Anyway, let's wrap this video up. Dark Phoenix inexplicably dropped X-Men from its title and crashed and burned at the box office. Early projections predict a loss of over $100 million for the troubled production. Simon Kinberg was in over his head and didn't adapt the Dark Phoenix saga well. For those of you excited for the X-Men to enter the MCU, be a little bit more discerning. SJW MCU was ushered in by Captain Marvel and activist extraordinaire Brie Larson. There's a good chance the MCU will be on its last legs before Marvel Studios even get the X-Men into the movie lineup. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.